So we are here with Jen Liddy, and I'm so excited. Jen left her high school teaching career to avoid a life of doomed to endless crappy ninth grade Romeo and Juliet essays for the rest of her life. In 2013, she made a terrifying leap into entrepreneurship and learned how to grow a business with a brick and mortar fitness studio, despite bumping into every wall and making all the mistakes along the way. Today, as a copy and content strategist, Jen harnesses all she's learned to help busy business owners out of marketing chaos. Her specialty, teaching strategic methods to nurture audience relationships. So one, you don't waste time or energy, and two, you leverage your ideas into words that make money for you. And the topic of our subject tonight is going to be stay off the content treadmill, easily create marketing content with a few simple shifts that fit your personality and style. So welcome, Jen. How are you tonight?
I'm good. That was a mouthful. When you write down your bio, it's one thing. And then when somebody reads it out loud, you're like, oh my God, I have to edit that up.
Well, it sounds good to me. And you're right. Stepping into entrepreneurship is a really scary thing. And
oh my God. Yeah.
And then just building those relationships. And just to mention that, we met in another group and, reached out and just said, hey, let's get on a call and talk. And that's what we did. And you start building relationships that way and get to know each other. So when I started thinking about, interviewing people, you were one of the first people I thought to, ask if you would do this with me. So I'm so glad that
I remember. Well, I'm really honored to be here because I think that content is one of those things that people, they get afraid of. And I think that it is overcomplicated for people. And so you're afraid to start with like, oh, am I going to screw it up? Am I going to do content wrong? I wasn't a good writer in school. You have all of these like fears, and it's a very vulnerable thing to put your content out in the world because you're basically writing. Even if you're doing video, it's a form of, your words going out there. So it's vulnerable. And then you've got all of these people telling you it's making it more complicated than it needs to be. And also there's just a lot of places to show up. So I'm really honored anytime somebody wants me to come into their group and talk about this stuff, because let's simplify it. Let's simplify it as much as we can.
Yes. I agree. And I know when I first started, I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to talk about what I'm passionate about. So that was all I did. But there is, strategic ways to do that. So tell us, what challenges do we face with creating content for 2023 market?
There's a lot of challenges. I think, the number one thing I just said is there's a million platforms. So one of the challenges is deciding where to be, especially if you're new to content, especially if you're just figuring this out. And there's a lot of shoulding that happens, right? So, oh, you should have a blog, you should be doing video, but it's very important, especially when you're getting started and when you don't have a team, to choose the platforms that really feel best for you, because if you can't keep it up, then you are never going to be able to sustain it. If you dislike writing, then a blog is not the best option for you. If you're terrified of looking into the camera, here I am looking into the camera right now. And if I didn't have an audience on the other end, I would just be talking to the camera, right? That can terrify people. So until you kind of understand yourself, I think that's the number one thing that people really can do, is understand themselves and not let the shoulds get to them. So there's a lot of shoulding. There's a lot of platforms. You're supposed to be everywhere. It's impossible.
Right.
That's one of the big challenges. I think another big challenge that's happening right now, but I would actually like to reframe it as a tool, is people are really afraid of all of the AI tools that are out there, and thinking like, oh, will this obviate the need for me to even be here? Will I, like, do I even need to show up? And an AI tool like ChatGPT is really interesting because it can help you, and it can be a place for you to start or a place for you to play around with. But if you don't know your voice, and I'm actually layering a third challenge on here, if you don't know your voice, like, how do you want to sound?
Right.
because you can use Chat GPT as a place to jump off of, but like, what are your stories? What's your cadence? What's your vocabulary? What's your style? And all of that needs to be figured out. And a lot of people come to content not knowing those things because they've never had to develop them anywhere before, or they're unaware of them. So a
Mhm.
lot of times when you're creating content, this third challenge is, oh, I sound like my coach, or I sound like this guru, or I sound like a robot, or I sound like some like, fake, phony, phony baloney expert. So I think that that's a third challenge, is finding your own place in this very big content sea.
I agree, because I've done a few things where, wanting to record something and I'm thinking, this just doesn't sound like me, or,
Yeah.
oh, this just sounds like I wouldn't want to listen to it,
Mhm.
but it was just because I was following something that somebody had given me to do. And
Yes.
so I needed to just, take that as a guide,
Mhm.
like the GPT, and just put my own voice in it. So yeah, it can be really tough in that thing, in that sense. So just, can you talk a little bit about maybe saturated markets? Because I know that, a lot of the
Oh,
coaches think, well, there's so many coaches out there,
everybody thinks their market is saturated, and every market is saturated. I mean, the way to stand out is not to yell louder. It's not to do more. It goes back to, I used to have a client who was a photographer, and she would say, like, and literally every photographer I ever met says to me the same thing: the market is saturated. And I don't think I've met anybody in any industry who feels like I'm the only one, I'm the unicorn, I stand out. So standing out is really important. And so I think this is kind of a mindset issue,
Mhm.
because you can use the market is so saturated as an excuse. You can complain about it. It doesn't change anything. So if you can say, okay, my market has a lot of people in it. How do I want to differentiate myself? How do I want to stand out? Standing out is super personal, and people think like y- y- uh, you, you need to show up more, or you need to be louder. And that, I mean, it's a noisy online world. It doesn't work to be louder. It works to be different. And one thing I want to say about this saturated market thing, the more you can get specific about who you are and who you help,
Right.
and I'm not talking demographics necessarily, and I'm not even talking niche necessarily. I'm talking about speaking to your exact right audience. And one of the aspects of that is when you really step into your you-ness to stand out,
Mhm.
and you are going to repel people who are not right for you.
Right.
And that is really scary, especially at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, of your content creation and marketing journey. It's very scary, but because you're like, just like, no, 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 I can help everybody. I
Right.
know you can help everybody because you're talented and you're smart, you're very well trained. You could help everybody. But saying that is like opening the window and just yelling out into my front yard, right?
Right.
And so the more specific you can get about who those people are, what qualities do they have, what is exactly their problems, like how do they differentiate themselves, and then what makes you different.
Right.
Um, for example, say you worked with, say you were a coach who worked with new moms
Mhm.
on, I have actually a client right now. She works with new moms on feeding, specifically breast and bottle feeding. And her differentiator is that she's a speech language pathologist, and she comes at it in a very specific way, different than like a chiropractor would come at it, right?
Right.
She has to lean into that and let go of the people who want the chiropractor,
Mhm.
way of doing things, but she's going to repel them because she's going to be talking about it in a very certain way. And so that lets her exact right audience be like, oh yes, I really like what you have to say. I'm going to lean in more for that. And it just lets her just be in her lane.
I love that analogy. I love the two people that you talked about, right? And chiropractor and a therapist, because they are going to approach it in a very
Yes.
different way. And I talk a lot with the coaches about using their years of expertise, their life,
Of
and
course.
bringing that into it along with whatever else they're passionate about, because we're all going to, do it in a different way, but that is such an important part of it. Can you talk a little bit more, because we did mention, about not feeling, feeling like we're not being loud, but wanting to be more noticed, and, performing with integrity. What are some of the three, couple things that we can look at for that?
When you say, okay, there's of course marketing integrity, every single person who's going to watch this video has people in their DMs selling them nonsense
Mm.
that feels super crappy. And because we've received that so many times, it can make us, especially coaches and especially therapists, mostly people in the service and helping industries, feel like, "Ooh, I don't want to sell. This is gross," but it doesn't have to be gross. So um, I always say to my clients, if you're even concerned about being sleazy, if you're concerned about ethics, if you're concerned about authenticity, you're way ahead of a lot of people who are doing marketing, right? So marketing isn't gross. One of the misconceptions is that it's a 24-hour kind of da 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 sales commercial for yourself, but
Right.
it's really about, I use a term called the marketing mirror. And when you show up for your audience with your voice, talking about what they need to hear, you are holding up a mirror to them and you are saying things to them that maybe nobody has ever said before. And they're like, "Oh my God, how did you know that? I've never even put words to that before. I didn't even know I felt that way before. I didn't even know this was a problem that other people had, nor did I know there was a solution." So holding up that marketing mirror is like a gift to your audience. And I think the best story I can tell to illustrate this was in my 40s. Um, I basically didn't sleep through the night and I had terrible insomnia. I would literally wake up every night at 1:27 every night. I could never get back to sleep. I went to my doctor. He, of course, went, "Well, you're in your 40s now." Like that was just it. It was like a death knell for the rest of my life. This was it. So fast forward like 8 years. A colleague of mine told me about this woman who does hormone replacement therapy that's like bioidentical hormones,
Mhm.
and they insert them under your skin, and then over the course of several months, like your hormones regulate, and boom, you feel like yourself again. So I went to see this woman. I slept through the night. I had energy again. I could, like, my whole life came back to me
Yeah.
after 8 years of this nonsense. And I said to her, "Why haven't I seen you in any of your marketing? I literally drive past your office 3 times a day." And she's like, "Well, we don't like to market. We have a nice referral program." And I was like, I've been dying for 8 years. But if she had held up a marketing mirror and I had seen like a Facebook ad or something or a post or something, she could have saved me 8 years of that kind of drama. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of that a misconception is it's gross and we're making it all about us. We're actually making it all about our audience because sometimes they don't even know that there's a solution like the one that you have.
That is such a great story, because like you say, we suffer without thinking we have any means of, solutions in front of us. And for those of us who have gone to doctor after doctor after doctor, and then all of a sudden someone stands up online and has the strength and
They're
the
waving the
courage to, yeah,
right.
to put this mirror out there and say, hey, right,
Hey.
you're going to just attract the people that need you. Any other things that you can mention on that? Just how to get noticed.
Yeah, getting notice and visibility is your
Okay.
number one thing, right? So having a very clear message is incredibly important. What happens, especially to coaches, because coaches are usually surrounded by other coaches.
Right.
So they kind of live in this coach bubble where they have coach speak and they talk about things like transformation or holding space or the journey, like what, even like even the tools that, like a thought turnaround or a download or whatever like coaches talk about, right? But they're always talking to each other and they forget that out in the muggle world, people don't talk like that. Like people don't talk about transformation. People are not Googling, how can I transform my life? How can I be empowered? How can I step into my, goddess power or whatever it is? And so you have to have really clear messaging, not for the other coaches in your life, but for the muggles in your life, the people who have never worked with a coach before, don't quite understand what coaching is. They really don't speak your language. So you could be making the most incredible, consistent reels, and you're on Instagram every day and you're using that as your tool and that's your platform, and you don't see any growth. Well, your message might be completely going like right over their heads. So the more that you can make your messaging really clear, like this is who I help and this is what I help them with, but speaking their language. What are they Googling?
Yeah. Yeah.
Start there.
I love that because that is so true. And we need to make it in our language, what we talk about, what we live every day. As an occupational therapist, the reason I had really great success with my clients is because I talked their language, right?
Their language.
Yeah. I did not. I was probably one of the few people that did not use all this OT jargon, right? And I did not say, use all like the muscles and all that. I just said to my patients, look, you want to go home? Here's what you got to do, right? I want to go home. What do I got to do?
That's super simple. It's super direct. It speaks my language. I can like sop that up with a biscuit, right? Like I can get that.
Exactly. Yeah. And, a lot more to it than that, but it was simple. If you really want to go home, this is what you have to do. So let's do it and let's get you home. And so I think when we're talking to, the people out there, you're so right about just speaking simple terms, just speaking what they're living, and using your own story for that.
Well, I can't express this enough, but people will not want to do it and they will rage against it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are not talking to the people who are your clients and the people who are in your audience or people that who are suffering with the same problem that you solve for, the exact problem, actually, if you talk to people in general and you research and you listen to what you don't coach them, you just listen to what's your problem? What are you struggling with in this realm? How is it affecting you? How would you like it to be? How is it rippling out across your life? How would you describe it? When you wake up in the morning, what do you think about? Like the more specific you can get, but you have to talk to them. And whether you talk to people who are like perfect for you, and also if you talk to people who wind up not to be perfect for you, that's also awesome because then like that's the kind of person I want to repel. This is the kind of person I want to attract. Yeah. So these they're not always client interviews. They're target market interviews. They're conversations, and everybody hates doing them, but they are so valuable because they give you like a bank. It's absolute content gold to have the words from your audience, because that's the reason that when you were an OT, you knew to say, you want to go home, here's what you have to do, is probably because years and years and years of people saying, please just tell me, what do I got to do to go home? Exactly. You learned their language. And so it's honestly almost less about our language and more about their words.
Yes, exactly. It's so true, and I always say, listen and hear what everybody's saying around you. What are the questions people are asking you all the time?
Yes.
And, what are the solutions that, they're wanting and stuff like that. So it's really, really important. As far as creating content, it always feels really overwhelming and exhausting, and feel like you're spending hours on it every week. And so what can somebody do about that to make it a little less feel like overwhelming and get them into procrastinating?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you 5 things.
Okay.
Number 1, every single time you create a piece of content or plan a piece of content, know why you're creating it. What do you want that piece of content to do for you? So that's the strategy. Do you want this piece of content? So say that your piece of content is, I'm not going to talk about socials because everybody thinks like socials are the thing. I'm going to talk about, like, say you're going to send an email to your list, right? What do you want that email to do for you? Do you want it to like educate people? Do you want it to move them to buy something? Do you want to nurture them with it? Like, do you want to engage them? Do you want them to like come back and reply? Like, why are you creating it? Not enough people consider that when they're creating. They're just like, oh, I got to get an email out this week. Oh, I can write about this thing, right?
Right.
So the strategy is like, how does this move people along a journey with you? So that's number one. Number two is, where do you want to be? Like, what are the platforms that are actually reasonable and sustainable for you to be on, that makes sense for you and your business?
Right.
Like, I'm going to say, I probably like should be on LinkedIn, but I loathe LinkedIn and I don't like being there. It's just not even on my radar. My favorite place, my favorite platform is, I have a podcast called Content Creation Made Easy, and I have an email list. Those are my two, those are my anchor pieces of content. They're big. What's happening in my podcast is probably also going to be what I'm talking about in my email, because I'm not doing two different things, right? So and then everything gets kind of parsed out to social after that, right? So I'll talk about repurposing in a minute, but like, what are your platforms? And if you're expecting that you're supposed to be on TikTok and also Facebook and have an email list and on YouTube, like you probably don't have a team at this point. You probably don't have a strategy, and you probably feel really scattered. So that is another thing, people trying to be in too many places. So the second thing is the platform. The third thing you want to do is, this is my favorite way to do it. A lot of people like what I'm about to say. Some people feel like it's too rigid for them. I like to, once I know like what my strategy is, like what I'm talking about, I think of it almost as like an umbrella or a theme, right? Like, so maybe for a coach might be talking about boundaries. Now, boundaries, you have a lot to say about boundaries. You coaches know a lot of tools, a lot of problems, a lot of solutions. Like, there's a lot to say about it. But what many people do when they're creating a piece of content is they'll take this theme, like, I need to talk about boundaries, and they'll shove it all into one email, one blog post, one podcast, or whatever, one piece of content, right? Well, what that does is it fire hoses your audience, and your audience is like, I want this stuff, but I'm thirsty, but I can't drink, right? It's like, so take whatever you were going to talk about boundaries, and break it up, wring it out. You probably have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks of content talking about different aspects of boundaries. You could talk about the myths. You could talk about some resources. You could talk about a story. You could talk about a success story. Like, there's a million things that you could talk about boundaries. And if you break it up over the course of days or weeks, you as the creator don't feel so overwhelmed. And your audience is like, oh, this is reasonable. I can absorb this. I can consume this. I call that the umbrella method. So basically it's like, there's some, theme for the month or the couple of months, and then you're just breaking it down. What everybody asks me here is, won't my audience get bored? No. Because what most people are doing with their content right now is like, today I'm a coach, and today I'm going to talk about boundaries, and tomorrow I'm going to talk about, being a perfectionist. And the next day I'm going to talk, like they bounce around with all of the things that they're experts on, right? So their audience can never kind of get the thread of a thing. And I don't know about you, but I know I am at capacity in my consumption. And so the more bite size you can make something for me, it's actually a gift for me as the audience member. So it's a gift for you to ring it out, because it takes your brilliance and like just extends it, but it's also a gift for your audience. So will your audience get bored? No, you will get bored with your own content way before your audience will.
Right.
And that's what we have to manage. So that's the third thing, is the umbrella. So that's a way to wring more content out. The fourth piece of staying out of overwhelm is like, again, if you are somebody who likes to like fly by the seat of your pants, scheduling this is not going to feel good for you. But I know from working with a lot of neurodivergent thinkers that it's actually, freedom is in the schedule. You just have to schedule it at a time that feels good for you, at an amount of time that feels good for you. So like, if you're following along the 5 steps, you already know like why you're doing it, where it's going to go, what you're going to say. Like, you've already made it easier with these first 3 steps. And the 4th step is basically like, get it on the freaking calendar. And the other thing I'll say about the calendar is it's kind of like a fishbowl content. Like it can take up as much space as you give it.
Right.
And so I actually like to turn it around on its head and say, like, I'm going to give this an hour. And the shorter I can be, the more concise I can be, the tighter I can be, the less perfect I can be. That's all I can get done in an hour. That's all I'm going to give it versus this. I mean, because when you've got something like you're in love with your own stuff, you just like tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak.
Right.
So that would be the fourth step, is to calendar it based on your energy and your capacity and your time frame, but actually making time for it. I think people don't make time for it and they kind of shove it into the nooks and crannies of their life, and then they feel resentful about it.
Yeah.
Versus saying like, oh, I'm going to actually use this umbrella method and get like 4 weeks, like kind of just sketched out. And then it's much easier to breathe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then the final piece to stay out of overwhelm is, how can you do less? I'm all about minimal content, maximum impact, like let's do less. Right. So if you're sending emails that are, like 1,000 words and nobody's responding, how much effort are you putting in? And can you just like shave some of it off or break it up into 3 emails? If you're recording a podcast, it's an hour. Does your audience really listen the whole hour? Can you break that up into 2 or 3 podcasts? So that last piece about doing less, this is where I really talk about repurposing. Because just because you've put something out once does not mean that your people have seen it. Even if like I have my email open rate is about 50%, 49 to 50%, which is a good open rate in the industry. But that means half of the people on my email list still haven't seen the thing that I've just put out, right? And on socials, less than 1% of our people, or organically of your followers who've raised their hand and said, I want to follow this person, less than 1% of those people are seeing your stuff.
Wow. Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. Like it's really heartbreaking. And especially I encourage people to do this. Look at those accounts that have like 365K, 1.1 million followers, right? Look at those accounts and then look at the likes and look at the comments and then do the percentage. You will see even those huge accounts with like 25,000 likes, that's still 1% of all of their followers. Right. So it's really okay to say things again, to put it out there again and again. Remembering that people in your audience, like they need to learn these lessons, or they need to hear. It's like I always say, I don't know. I live with 2 other humans, and I don't know why I need to say like 17 times to pick up your socks and bring them upstairs, but I need to repeat myself 1,000 times. So even the people that love us and are listening to us, don't really hear us. So we can repeat ourselves. And we can repurpose materials that we've created. So if you say you recorded like a YouTube video, that's your thing, like you are a YouTuber. Well, what if you took that longer form video and you chopped it into shorter videos, right? And then you could use them as shorts. Or if you are a podcaster, you could take the transcription of your podcast and simply, now you've got text, which means you can pull out gems of quotes, or you can use it as a blog to get some traffic to your website. Like there's a lot of different things you can do. And repurposing doesn't mean like take it in full from here and shove it here. It really means like, how can I massage this for another platform that I have capacity for? Yes. And lastly, repurposing, you might have written a blog 2 or 3 years ago, and it has not seen the light of day in 2 or 3 years. Why not like revive it, take it out of the grave, dust it off, zhuzh it up a little bit, make it a little bit more relevant, put a new call to action on it. And now it's a repurposed piece that, again, there's a lot more people following you now. There's a lot more people in your audience now. They have not seen this yet.
Exactly. It really does. And I know me, I love to hear repeated information. It helps me
Yes,
digest it and absorb it. So, if you just say it one time and think, oh, I can't go out and say
that's
that
it. I
again
said it
because
once.
I did it. Like, no, 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 because people need to hear it over and over again. And a lot of people, they're not ready. So when they are ready, that you will show up as the teacher and they will be ready. So the more you
Yes.
keep repeating things, it's going to be finally you're going to get that person because they will finally be ready
Yeah,
for
their taxi light will have gone on. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So it's so can't be afraid to like repeat what you're doing and repurpose your information and just recreate it in a couple different ways. I think that's so great. And
Yeah.
so I really appreciate that information. I love
Oh,
your
my pleasure.
I've
So if you follow those, so it's basically 5 questions. I'm just going to reiterate this because it's just super
please.
helpful for people. So to stay out of overwhelm, the first question is, why am I creating this?
Mhm.
Where am I going to put it? What am I going to say? And remember to say less, say less.
Yes.
When am I going to create it? Get that on the calendar. And how else can I use it?
Mhm. Yes.
5 simple questions that you can ask yourself that if you just check in when you're like sitting down to do your content. I mean, I can't I can't make content go away, right? Like we have to do content. It's kind of a non-negotiable in today's market, but we can make it palatable and we can make it feel like us.
Yeah. And for me, what I do is I like to create a lot of stuff first, and then I'll take one day and I'll sit down for 2 hours and I'll schedule it all out. At one
Mm-hmm.
time, just because I have it already and it's so easy to just, then schedule it. But it does give me freedom because I can then schedule out 2 months at a time or 3 months I have at sometimes. And now I have 3 months where I can take a
Can breathe a little bit. Yeah, that's batching.
yes.
Yes, yes.
And so
But
it's
you
really,
need to put it on your calendar. And a
yes,
lot of people will always avoid it because they're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what the point is. But when you really start with the end in mind, why am I creating this content? Oh, I'm moving people to my free challenge. Oh, over the next 8 months, I really want to share this lead magnet that I created. Like, oh, I really want to educate people on this topic. Like, start with the end in mind, and then everything else gets easier.
right, right. And don't be afraid to, coach somebody on or teach somebody one topic for a while.
Yes. Because there's a million facets to that topic.
Yes.
There's not just, it's not, I guess this is an important thing that we haven't touched on yet. Too much how-to content is actually detrimental to you and your audience, but not for the reason that you think. A lot of people in the olden days of marketing would say, like, don't give away all your how-to content because that's why they pay you. Especially coaches don't get paid for information. Coaches get paid for transformation, right? Like
Mhm.
everybody on the planet could probably find out all the information that they wanted to by if they were really persistent in Googling or Pinteresting or getting on Amazon and finding a book, right? But the reason people want to hire us is that we have it curated and we take them by the hand and we take them through it. And that's the transformation. So people aren't really paying for information per
Right.
se. But that was an old thing that people would say, like, don't give away all the hows because then you're giving away all the secrets. But it's not, I'm not talking about not being generous and not giving your secrets. What I'm saying is when you give all the how-to content away, what your audience does, they're like, okay, here's an Instagram post. And you're like, here's the top 5 tips to get out of procrastination mode. And there are those top 5 tips. And somebody's like, oh my God, I need this so much. I'm going to save this for later. They never go look at it again, right? So
Mm.
you've done all this work of creating content that's how to, and here's my expertise and just do these things and I'm so helpful. Yes, but like it's basically like putting a band-aid on a gushing wound. And
Mm.
so you have burned yourself out with all of this just like generating. And they're just like save for later, save for later, save for later. If they could have figured it out already, they would have figured it out already.
So what's your answer to that?
Go back to that marketing mirror that I talked about at the beginning of our conversation. When you say to someone, I'm going to use the example I used with the hormones, right? Like imagine that I had stumbled upon a post of this doctor and maybe she had said, "Are you waking up at 2:27 every single night? do you spend the next 3 hours? Let me not even put in a question mark, because that can sound sleazy to some people, but you wake up at 1:27 every night and you spend the next 4 hours doing math in your head about how many hours of sleep you're not getting. You sweat through the sheets. You haven't slept in years. You hate your family, and you just don't know how you're going to get through the next day. You are in menopause, and nobody has taught you how to deal with what you're dealing with. That's why I want you to know you're not alone. I want you to know there's a solution.
Yeah.
And the first thing that I want you to do is start to take magnesium before you go to bed. Like, that would be a thing that she could have written. And I would have been like, this woman is in my head. And she could have started to gain my trust, right? And or she could have said, like, this is why you need bioidentical hormones. Did you even know bioidentical hormones were a thing, etc. Using that marketing mirror, and it doesn't always have to be the pain, right? It could be the pleasure too. It could be the solution.
Right, exactly.
Like, did you even know that you could sleep through the night while you're in menopause? Did you even know that this was a solution? Did you even know that this was a possibility? Most people don't. Here's how it works. Oh my God, I'm riveted. Tell me more, because I haven't slept in 8
I'm
years,
watching
right?
you. I'm following you. I'm getting everything you give.
I want to know more. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. So that is, am I saying never use how-to content? Of course not.
Right.
I'm saying use it kind of sparingly and use this marketing mirror. Another way to think about this is empathy. Who's more empathic than coaches, right? Like, so if coaches in their content can start to use empathy and just say, look, I see you. Do you see yourself? Because I see you over this mirror, and let me give you some information. Let me know that you're not alone. Let me help you stop judging yourself. Let me help you get where you want to go. So that would be my way out of the how-to content.
All right, coaches, I hope you're listening up for that. Oh my gosh, because that just made total sense. Anything else that we can consider at the end of all of this? Like,
I could honestly talk about, I'm such a freaking nerd. I'm such a word nerd. I love talking about content, because it's a way that we can not only express ourselves and help our audiences, which is why, I mean, especially for coaches, they are in their business because they love helping people. But you can't burn out.
mm-hmm.
And so putting some kind of system in place that's realistic for yourself is super important. And I've been talking about that the whole time. Visibility is a big thing that we talked about. Like, how can you be more out there without being like, feeling like you're a 24/7 commercial? Showing up for your audience regularly is actually a service to them. They know when to expect it. I've got some people in my own inbox that I only hear from when they have something to sell. And I don't like that. Like, I think that that's super transparent.
Right.
So, kind of showing up consistently to give people some value, and just staying top of mind, is the consistency piece is more important than I think people give it credit.
Yes. Absolutely.
And consistency doesn't necessarily mean every day. What does consistency mean for you? So I like to kind of approach content in kind of a yogic way. Does that feel good? Do you need to back off? Do you need to tweak something? Does this work for you? There's just no one right way.
Right.
And there's a lot of people out there who want to sell you that there is their one right way, but there couldn't possibly be one right way.
Okay. That's very true. That's very, very true. I think it's got to feel good to you. So this was so wonderful. I think you've given us so much information. It's, oh my gosh, so much to absorb. I'm sure I'm going to be going through this video again, just for my own benefit. And just so you coaches know, Jen has a download for us for a free customized content planner, which I'll be posting under this video. Once it's done and ready, I'll post the video and I'll post it under there as well. And then I will also post where you can, get a hold of Jen. She'll have her Facebook, Instagram, and I will be posting all of that under here. And so if you guys have any questions, please reach out to her and, check her out and everything. But I'd love to leave with one last thing, which I've been asking everybody when they come on. Okay. What's on your bucket list and why? One thing on your bucket list and why?
To live in a lake house year round with floor to ceiling windows. That's my dream.
Wow. Any particular place?
I want it to be a warm place. We live in Syracuse, New York, in upstate New York. And so you get like we have a lake house here, but it's like you can get it for, you can get like maybe 3 months out of it. I want to live in a beautiful lake house year round.
Year round. Awesome. That sounds really, really good. I'm going to put out the manifestation vibes there for you.
Thanks, Lisa. What's on your bucket list, Lisa?
Say that again.
What's on yours?
Gosh, I basically want a big, beautiful house that's just got big open spaces. It's
Mhm,
clean, it's bright, it's got lots of windows, it's by the water.
mhm.
Although, you know, living in California was nice, but it wasn't my place. But we did live like 4-minute walk to the ocean.
Mm,
Never thought I'd want to live by the water until I lived there. So I want to be near the water, you
yeah,
know, somehow, some way. So yeah, that's one of the things. I got a bunch.
nice.
That's one of the things. All right, coaches. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let us know. Comment below this video. Let us reach out and let me know. Let me know what else you want to see coming our way. And we will see you later on. Bye for now. Let me just go stop that on. Okay, the video's done there. Let me
Great.